What goes, my man? It is a happy, well, it's Monday here. What day is it there? It was still Monday?
It is Monday afternoon.
All right.
This is episode 32.
Dang, I talked to you too much. No, I'm kidding.
I know.
Tell me something good.
Beside our heat wave?
Well, we are I literally walked the dog a couple hours ago. It's pretty nice. You know, I mean, we're at the tail end of the shit. So a couple more weeks. Yeah. So what happens to the rural areas that don't have any air conditioning? I mean, just make it through one of those deals, I assume. Much like Mexico also, or here.
Yeah. Also guess, like, how did the farmers go through this when the weather's changing period? India is supposed to have like a couple of grow seasons, right? And right now, if we do not have those grow seasons, would that lead to a food shortage?
Well, I mean, you think of how many people you have. You know, I mean, where else are you going to go get food for, almost 2 billion people? I mean, Ukraine used to be the wheat for everybody. So Africa is going to take the hit on that. They were letting them export for a while, and then they stopped the exports. And which is really it's a terrible thing. I'm sure the middlemen are making a shit ton of money as always, but going to have a lot of starvation next year over that. So you remember me telling you, I told Kyle the first time around, I said, I don't want to be that big of a contrarian. But right now, you want to invest in grains that hold, and buckwheat is probably the best grain that holds that can be made into almost anything. Do you all use buckwheat over there?
What is buckwheat?
It's just a really, really super hearty wheat. So I've had buckwheat pancakes. I've had buckwheat pasta. But, it's for some reason or another over here, it's just not that popular. It was thought to be like a slave grain, perhaps, originally.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know anything factually on any of this, but it went out of style that way. Like it was a poor person's food, and poor people's food generally tastes the best. That's what's so weird. It doesn't make any sense.
Minus lobster, Sean.
Right, there you go. Yeah, but it depends on where you live. Lobster's cheap some places.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how that shakes out, Deepak. I really mean it for next year and beyond. Because as you guys adjust, look, California's just been battered with fires and floods, and all the lakes are now full again. It's the first time they don't have drought problems since I remember living there 40 years ago when drought problems started. So they do most of America's food. I mean, in the San Fernando Valley is what it's called. It really isn't in the Midwest and stuff. We feed cattle with the grain and corn that we grow here, mostly. And Kansas used to export all their grain to Russia, but I doubt that's happening anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Politics does come into play, man.
I know you cannot actually pretend to not give a shit about other countries because you live in one.
Right. It is. So there. Yeah. I don't even know. I don't even know where to go with so many of those things. Let me tell you a story though. So a couple of years ago, I watched this documentary on France, and they were having high concentrations of cancer among children, and so they took this really seriously and said, okay, we believe it's the pesticides being sprayed on our food. Now, this wasn't even food going to those schools. And what they said is we will pay the local farmers more money to sell to our schools so everything's fresh. And I think you had to be within 40 miles and it had to be organic. So the children, their lunches and the snacks or whatever they get in the morning, all had to be organic and all had to be from, I believe it's 40 miles. If I'm wrong by like 20 miles. So America has evidently adopted this, but it's 400 miles, which sounds like a big, but this place is gigantic. So
isn't that like a portion of Europe if you consider it? Where you can get it from like 5 different countries.
I know. But here it's just Texas. Or California. California coastline is 1,100 miles.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, until you've ever driven it, you have no idea how big that really is. And it's beautiful, the whole thing. So here's the problem in Oklahoma. We've got this crazy school superintendent that doesn't want to take any federal money for anything. So the federal money that each school can get is $25,000 allotments as long as the food is minimally processed and grown within 400 miles. That is a boom for local farmers, local processors, meat processors, all this stuff. Absolute boom. Could guarantee you that your children can inherit the farm and stay there. The money's not getting through because the superintendent has to sign off on it.
Oh God, this is such a short-sighted, myopic view of the situation.
It's no idea the long-term consequences of not doing it. Look, those farmers just came out of COVID. They're as screwed as everybody. They're just hanging on for dear life, but they all voted for him. Yeah. And this may be the one wedge issue that's big enough to get them to realize these guys are full of shit. Oh, yeah. You know, you go, he literally is withholding your money for the survival of your small farm, because it doesn't have to be a big farm. These can be small processors and they can sell directly to the school district.
Does the federal government get to say, like, come back and tell Ryan Walters that, listen, take this money, otherwise we're not hiring anyone for the federal government from your state? Right.
Well, you know, that is a possibility, and I'm not going to say that's not a possibility. The forever challenge is that until we as Americans see mega corporations and the profits they made, especially during COVID, as the problem, and we still see government no matter what is the problem, we're never going to solve it. Because it really, parties don't control that. Lobbyists control that. Politicians control that. So thinking you're part of the right gang is questionable at best. And you know, one is probably more people than the other one, and one is more corporate than the other one. But besides that, man, I'm telling you, this voting thing's starting to be important. Yeah, you know, we had an easy run for a while. Sorry.
On Saturday, I was actually on my little soapbox lecturing some people about why we don't have the mob, the mafia, and all of those proper stories in this day and age, because we legalized all of that bullshit and it's now corporations. The loan sharks are your credit card companies. The fucker who
hold on, and the payday loans. That's former loan sharking, right? Yeah, it used to be called usury laws, right?
Then your monopolies are already there, but now it's not the mob that controls some line of business. It's basically a company. So everything that we used, the mafia don who's living in mansions and getting all his payments is now the CEO who gets his bonuses, whether the company while the worker suffers. Same thing.
Yep. Hey, man, I tell you what, I literally had read this deal about worker-owned companies, and I think it's something to really, for people to investigate, that if you're going to work, it's not enough just to get a job somewhere. You got to get a job somewhere where they might is the word, look out for you. So would a worker-owned company give a CEO an $18 million bonus?
No, they will not.
Right. They'd spread it out amongst everybody. And he might get it. Sorry, go ahead.
The guy from Patagonia, the company Patagonia, there was one time, I don't think he draws more than like 500,000 or something as a salary as a CEO. Because he's like, I don't have the need for any more money. I have everything. I mean, he's like, what the fuck am I going to do with a couple of million every year?
It doesn't help. There are a few companies in America left that do that. So I have to be honest with you. I grew up in a city that had great corporate partners. And as those companies grew, they paid for things for the city. And they didn't make us take it or anything. So like we had sports teams in a relatively small town. They didn't ask us to build them a stadium. They didn't ask us to underwrite their first year's payroll. They did it because so their employees would have stuff to do.
Yeah.
You know, literally like the Kansas City Royals, world champions, Kansas City Chiefs, world champions, absolute losers business-wise. Absolute losers. And a guy named Hunt, Lamar Hunt was the one that owned the Chiefs. And you know, we had a sand business, but you know, his family was uber wealthy. And then the Merriam Merrill Dow Pharmaceuticals was this guy that started a pharmaceutical company in his basement repackaging aspirin. I wish I was kidding. He bought bulk aspirin, put it in cool bottles, and sold that shit. And but he was the
Hang
same
on,
thing. He didn't need any more
I'm
money.
making notes.
Yeah, right. Okay, so here's some weird bigotry that comes along with that kind of stuff. So the Marion Merrill Dow guy, I'll think of his name here, of course, after I'm off the podcast. Super nice guy, but we had such elite country clubs they wouldn't let him in.
Are you
And he
kidding
was
me?
a worldwide business. Oh, he didn't give a shit, so he started his own.
That's what I like.
And so every time he would go there and eat, all of the employees, he'd tip everybody $100 each. You know, he didn't throw around money like a drug dealer, but he knew those folks were there to make sure the place was represented and did really, you know, that kind of stuff. They were essentially his employees, but he never was able to get into the Kansas City Country Club or Mission Hills Country Club.
Good Lord,
yeah.
Dude. Yeah, you guys are classes. You guys have perfected classes into another level that I think we're slowly aspiring and catching up to.
Classy with a KKK. Hey, it is. But you know, having grown up and known that, and he made no. He was not shy about telling people that was the story. He didn't get two shits about any. But he was a super nice guy. And the reason I bring all of this up, I used to go to his house on Halloween because he gave like $2 candy bars to everybody. Didn't give a shit. I mean, and of course, I don't think it was him giving them. Probably somebody who worked the front gate. But everything was accessible. His house wasn't gated up, and he was probably the richest man in our city.
Oh shit! Speaking of this, yes. I'm just going to tell you this, and you continue with this story because it kind of connects. I was reading something about how populations nowadays in different countries no longer mingle with each other because they no longer hang out at the same places. Like,
oh wow,
do they meet? Like the only places where people's interactions overlap is like at a gas station, a petrol station here, or like a mall where they all have to go into that mall to look for a particular store that they're looking for. Other than that, they literally don't see people from other classes and places in their own city.
So I have always thought it was humorous that we have an area here called Gaillardia, and they put a fence around the whole thing, like a big wall. And you go, do you all know anything about French history? I don't care what the wall is. If people are pissed enough, they're coming over. But then the people guarding the wall are the exact people they want to keep out.
Yeah. That is the funny part, right? The help and the stuff in there.
Do you get the irony here? So I don't, we right now are having a classism bubble up, is I think what I would say. So there was this song put out by this redheaded kid with a big red beard, looked like Matt Bennett.
Oh, shit. Are you talking about that Richmond from Richmond?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Most people misunderstand the song because I got to admit, when I listen to it, I'm like, man, dude, quit making fun of a 300-pound person. I'll give you the history behind it because there really is. So in Appalachia, which is where he's from, is mostly Scotch-Irish. It's my people. We came over here dirt poor. We got some land down there. You know, I'm sure probably had to kill a few people to take it. But, you know, what happened to us, so we did it to other people. We're lucky that you guys never did that to other countries because that would have been a problem. But we did, you know, we didn't mind. And so they're still dirt poor. But back in the 1980s, evidently there were some real liberal policies that went through that you could get on disability for being overweight. And that's the one that everybody attacked. So lawyers would call your house and ask if you were overweight. Would you be interested in getting on disability? So all these poor whites that, you know, already weren't making shit for money. And that's what he's talking about. You know, jobs don't pay shit. Dollar ain't worth nothing. So if they were going to be dirt ass poor, why not be dirt ass poor and get a government check? Because it sounds like they're talking about what used to be called welfare queens. That was a buzzword with Republicans for people taking advantage of the system. No, it's actually poor whites. And it's in that 10 states. Oklahoma has a ton of disability cases here. But they were able to get on disability for life for being overweight. And once I
wow.
heard that, I'm like, oh, that's what that cracker means. I mean, that's what that guy means. Because I was like, dude, you don't look like you're doing much better. I don't know why you're bitching about that person. But what it is he's working and they're embarrassed about their own family members that are not working, that are bilking the system.
Yeah.
And they're ashamed of them. Now, I don't know why you couldn't rhyme that in there. Shame is my game. You know, I mean, there's a whole bunch of rhymes. You could Google that shit. What do I rhyme shame with? Those are my proud people right there, T-Pack, you know, I don't even know what to say other than that. I did find it ironic they played that dude's song at the Republican presidential campaign and said, what do you all think this means? And they thought it was a pro Republican.
Do you know
message.
He released a statement after that and he was like, dude, the Richmond from Richmond I'm singing about is you guys. Why the fuck did you play my stupid song there?
But what I see out of that is when I first heard it, okay, and for anybody listening, Richmond, Virginia. Virginia, right? I believe I'm right on that. So it is literally an old school blue collar hills tune about being poor. Because, you know, coal mining companies went in and they work everybody to death and then they go bankrupt magically when everybody starts dying. So they've got a legitimate beef, but they also won't leave where they're at.
Oh, yeah.
So what's left? You can make booze, you can make hooch, you can make meth, and you can grow weed. And now that weed's legal, yeah, I mean, well, probably have two patches, the legal one and the illegal one, you know. That business has not slowed down. That is not at all. But so the thing that I hear is the Republicans have tried to co-opt the message. Like they're for those people. And you go, okay, American for Prosperity is their donor. They're not for you. But I don't know how to get that across to people. I really don't. I mean, and you know, man, dude, they do really good with the devil-loving communists. Yeah, I mean, they're better at it. And what they do is they're real smart. They compliment the Democrats on messaging and go, man, they are so good, but they've got ad agencies working for them. You know, the NRA they were all out of Oklahoma. That ad agency was here, Ackerman McQueen, you know, that came up with all the NRA shit. So it's tricky, bro. It's tricky.
Also, shifting gears.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you.
Segue time.
Did you see? Oh, that was smooth, Sean, until you told them. Did you see the moon landing thing that India did?
No, I sent you a message saying, hey, you guys landed a rocket on the moon, which, you know, what is that? Only 4 countries have ever done that. So was it the same group of women that built it? That's what I want to know.
I'm not sure, but they did say that there were a lot of women who worked on the project. It was the same. So we have only one like space agency here, which is called the ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. They were the ones who did it. So it would be the same team, is my guess. But it was like.
So are you guys going to team up with Elon Musk now and have him private launch all your shit?
Oh God, I hope not. I hope this is like something that can compete with his stupid dick rocket.
God, I know. Man, woo, that dude, he's too much. But I like the movie about the women doing it. And I know it was a legitimate story, but I'd be interested if you can find out by next time we do a podcast if it was those same ladies.
No, yes,
that was impressive. I don't care who you are. That was impressive.
It was that movie we watched, right? The Bollywood movie. Yeah, I can't remember the name.
How they managed to mix Bollywood in there was puzzling, but you know,
we have to do that, John. Otherwise, people won't pay attention.
Exactly, I know. So, if you ever watch Spanish-speaking news in the morning here, all of a sudden there's a conga line out of nowhere, like da 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 da, and they just dance around the set. Now, they may have just been talking about gangland murders, but that's what they do.
About this moon landing thing, I was being a dick to a friend of mine who was like, dude, I am so proud to be an Indian. And I was like, listen, you failed accounts in 12th grade and I had to teach you. So you don't be proud of anything. Knock it off. Let the people who did it be proud.
That's right. Good for you. Good for you. Isn't it nice to be proud of something smart though?
Oh yeah.
Right. You know, we ran into a problem with our space agency stuff. Is originally they basically had an unlimited budget. And then they started having to go along with the federal budget stuff of the lowest bidder, which is the single most dangerous thing you can do in engineering. Right.
When did they start cutting budgets? It was around like Nixon or Reagan, right? One of them started it first, removing funding for NASA.
Reagan was most well known for trickle-down economics and emptying out all the mental health hospitals, which we are all now having to rebuild, knowing full well that was an abject failure.
Yeah.
And what they did do, though, is we put those patients in private prisons, and then we paid double. So
yeah, I'm waiting for the private prisons to show up here. We're gonna be like soothsayers, Sean, where we're just predicting shit.
Well, there is a cycle to it, though. I mean, there really is a cycle to it. So when I first traveled to Europe, it was a really safe place to travel. Like you could sleep outside at night and nobody messed with you. You know, because I think they sent their less desirable folks elsewhere. And so the people that like living in Europe live there, and they were then, you know, nonviolent, but you know, that's all flipped around. You know, it's not and I'm not going to blame it on the Eastern Bloc folks, but you know, a whole bunch of them did come in and shit started going bad. It's an interesting dynamic to watch, basically the fall of England, and America seems to be going right behind them with all the same bullshit. You know, England gave away all their manufacturing capacity to us. And we took all their money and everything else. And then we gave it away to China and you guys. Basically, Walmart created China. They existed as a really poor population, but Walmart built them.
I knew a couple of families here that were like exclusive clothing suppliers to Walmart.
Yeah. They do well.
This was my joke on the moon landing. Sean, it was where the entire country of 1.4 billion people woke up and that's all they posted about on social media. I was wondering what the hell would happen to the world if all white people just woke up and they were just fucking proud all the time like that. I'm like, is this how they fucking feel every day? We just felt that one day when we landed on the moon.
I will tell you what that does to you as a population, though. That lets everybody know we can do it.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
You know, Ireland never develops anything. The only thing we did was build DeLorean cars, and you saw how that worked out. Somebody ended up smuggling a bunch of cocaine, took the whole thing down. Typical Irish crime. You know? I mean, it really was. We just don't, in Ireland, they don't believe they can build anything unless you come to America. And my guess is you guys are the same way. And so now you're learning that's just not true.
There are a lot of little startups coming up here that are raising like money, which is close to what the Silicon Valley guys do, which is pretty interesting. But the only thing weird I find in those little posts where they're like, oh, this is India's new unicorn startup. I'm like, why is it just a bunch of dudes? I'm like, where are the women in these damn companies?
Well, I can tell you, seeing photos of people over there, you're a few steps behind on that shit.
See, I was actually thinking about like, why don't we have like an organization that invests in women-only startups? Or if there is one, they probably do like so little marketing that I haven't come across them yet.
So I think what you would have to do is go back and look at the small farm women marketing and see if they continued to finance those women or only until they were self-sufficient. That's where that would work, because I'm telling you, single moms, best people I've ever invested in my entire life.
Hey, there is actually this around, oh yeah, for sure. There is this company in Oklahoma that we did some work with that no, we didn't end up working with them, but I talked to them, and I think they invested in women-only startups in Oklahoma. It's run by this Erica Lucas, I think, and it's called Stitch Fix or something like that. You've met her, Sean. She's been in the restaurant a couple of times.
Well, we have to narrow that down to 20,000 people.
You know.
But thank you for reminding me. The name is the name is very familiar. So I do recognize the name, but these days I was always puzzled by people's names because my kids went to so many different schools, you know. So
Yeah.
I just struggle. I struggle with it. But I tell you, over there, that would be I mean, you know, one way or another, that's the future because that's the way it goes. You know,
Okay.
they're look, my wife, no matter where she worked, she would do well. But by owning her own company, she didn't have to worry about the glass ceiling.
Yeah.
She figured out where the ceiling was going to be. Nobody else did, you know? And there is something to be said for that. You know, your sister's obviously very bright. Your mother's obviously very bright, but they are still, one way or another, held back by the decisions of others.
Yeah.
Because of culture, you know? I mean, I know your sister well. She's as smart as anybody I met over here. But over here, we still have some of that. We just don't have the amount that we once had. But we still have some of it. You know, my biggest advice to my girls, own your own company, man. Why are you bitching about your boss?
Yeah.
Do your own stuff, you know? But that entrepreneurial thing has to go in where, you know, how do you then change arranged marriages? How do you then change the formatting? The biggest problem that I hear from some men is that once women realize they don't really need men, they don't really need men then. And the men are like, well, what do we do? And you go, find a purpose, man.
Yeah, for sure.
if she owns the company, how can you help her be better at owning a company? I mean, there's no shame in that game, but hey, had my rhyme. But I don't know. I mean, culturally, how far are you guys out from that?
I think there are a few startups that I've come across that are women owned. Like there's a friend of mine who does really well. She runs a design and architectural firm.
Nice.
Yeah. And she was like born, raised in Bangalore and does pretty well.
Right.
But I don't know. It's basically what I see in the newspaper, I guess, which is my problem, where you just focus on the big swinging dicks of companies, which usually just are a bunch of dudes. And I'm like, oh, okay.
But I'd be interested if you and I would fall into that same category given wherever we were, because if you go to a school where it's all boys in one school, all girls at the next school, those are your mates. That's who you grew up with.
Yeah.
You know who's good at something, so you bring them on. That is tricky. Yeah. I mean, I learned the girl thing on accident. Once I hired my first single mom that had a couple of kids, all she was there for was work. There was no drama. There was no bullshit. I was like, oh my God, this is the magic equation. You know, she didn't want to socialize with me, but I also did not want to socialize with her outside of work. But we did incredible. Yeah.
The girl I work with in London, she is a single mother. And it was hilarious because we were on call this weekend. And the first thing she commented about is she was like, you're in a t-shirt. I was like, sorry, it's the weekend. Because she was like still in like a proper suit.
Right.
And she was like, at least sit up straight. This is not a matinee you're watching. And I was like, all right. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, anything else?
Wow.
She was like, also, did you lose your razor? I was like, okay, enough with the insults.
Wow.
Just tell me what you call me about.
Good for her. Good for her. I just, you know, look, I think if I were you, that is a segment, that's a sector you could do well in. And you could draw financing from most wealthier countries to support that, especially if the loans were $5,000 or $10,000 or less.
Oh shit, for sure.
Yeah,
you should look at it like a microfinance type of deal where.
Yeah. I mean, how about I'm interested in how that would work out. That's fascinating. But you know what so in Peru, this priest went down to Peru and everybody was unemployed. And he started looking at stuff they needed for the church back in America because, you know, they were just a lot of times buying shit off online. And he literally had people teach these, especially if they were women in an abuse shelter, a way to sew church garments and stuff. And that's how they were able to make their living.
Candle making. I don't know why I thought of candle making, and I was like, hell yeah, I can see that.
Lots of candles. Lots of candles. So it's all there. It's a matter of, can you see beyond the four walls around you and the fact that you only have enough food for today?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
that is a really hard mentality to get out of.
Yeah, it's like that Chappelle quote, right? Poor is a state of mind. What does his father tell him? You're not poor, son. You're broke.
It's totally different. It's totally different. Well, so what I would say on that is maybe 10 years into business, if I'm talking to you and I go, well, this is what I'm interested in doing, you go, oh, that's expensive. And I'll guarantee you've heard me say this 100 times to other people. And I go, well, tell me what expensive is.
Yeah.
Because it means something different to every single person. But to me, expensive means it's out of reach. Yeah. And, so I want to know, is it legitimately out of reach, or is it out of reach in your mind?
True.
Tells me a lot about a person when they explain to me what expensive is.
Oh, for sure. Like just the other day, I was having this conversation with my sister where she was asking me about marketing something on like social media. And I was like, see, the main problem with that is this advertising spend that you have to do over a period of 6 to 12 months, which is somewhere within the range of, say, you can start as low as $100 a month, or you can start as like $500 a month, but you have to keep it for at least a year and a half to start seeing that generate results. And that was my definition of, that is how much of investment you need to start something like that, considering that there are a dime a dozen companies that do the same thing, which are all like startups, people doing it from home and shit like that. Right. She was like, oh shit, you spend too much time with Sean, don't you? And I was like, I know.
but you got to look at it and go, one email, one blast of advertising does you nothing. It just makes people aware of your company. That's it. And over here, I think on radio, it had to be heard 15 times before there was any action. And you go, God dang, that's a lot of money. And then there's no guarantee there's a lot of action. Look, how many things have you and I done? You just after a year, you go, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's move on to something else that'll work. I'll give you an example. So the sales on my infusion book, I sold more of those down at that Asian market in one day than I've sold anywhere else. And I was just like, I have got to get to the market I need, not the market I want. And that is totally on me. But I'm going to start doing weed conventions and just, get a table, put my stuff up, and everybody comes by and chat with them. Right. Or the state fair. How about the state fair?
State fair would be awesome. Weed convention would be awesome. Do you remember that time where I actually went and did Oklahoma Funeral Homes Association when we were doing the elderly care application? Hell yeah, I've done that. Awesome. Yeah, we took the application there because people who were there at the convention were mostly funeral home directors, and they would know the widow. So all our deal was, why don't you guys just, and when anyone comes in for like funeral services, just tell them, download this application and we'll kick you back some bucks if they sign up for the premium version. So that was the whole idea. But the weird part was like we were standing around caskets the entire day.
It is a little creepy, but my thing is, what I learned was people wanted to talk to the author.
Yeah.
And just like a book signing, I have to make myself available to do it. So I gotta figure out a way to get into because the state fair is in a few weeks. So I don't know if that's possible, but I can do the conventions. Isn't that crazy?
That's awesome. Actually, you should do the state fair.
Well, I think the problem is, I think in that week, all the books are gone. And then what?
Now,
you got to buy more, which I'm cool with. I don't mind. That's something to be had. How much time we got?
Oh, we have 4 minutes. It's weird that you talked about the THC book because that was one of the items where I was like, oh, we need to talk about some of Sean's THC recipes because I wanted to start directing some traffic back to your cooking channel as well.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Whenever we need to. Look, the biggest thing that I have done with that. Sorry, I got to put something in my bathroom. The biggest thing that I've done with that is treat cancer patients, and most people don't have any idea. So in America, there's 1.7 million people per year that get diagnosed with cancer. And each one of those families needs one of those books.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm telling you, the pain that people are in before they actually get a physician to diagnose something and give them legitimate painkillers and shit, of which they get addicted to and all that. So I'm not saying that weed is the ultimate solution. I'm just saying it could carry over until you get the real heavy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? And cheap and easy, especially here, you know, where it's licensing's cheap. You know, you can buy weed anywhere for, you know, $20 or $30 an ounce. But yeah, it's there's a market there to be had, and I just have not gone and gotten it, weirdly enough. So yeah, that's my next thing. Well, you better take us out, bro. We're almost out of time here.
Hell yeah. Well, that was the Villagers podcast. We were all over the place today, as usual. But less dead air than usual. To us on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, just hit the subscribe button.
That's me in the background making that noise. All right, D-Bag, I'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.
See you.